there, friends and crafters. This is Diane, the Creative Inkster, coming to you live from Guelph, Ontario in Canada. Today I am doing Technique Tuesday. It is May the 18th, and the project is a technique called Chalkboard. And I'm going to show you how to make this look like a chalkboard. And I did this one with a sponge dauber, and I think that the trick is to go back to using a sponge. So Stampin' Up! No longer sells the sponges, but of course if you have one, you have them, right? You have them forever. So just a wedge of sponge I think would work a little bit better. But anyway, I do want to show you how this cool technique works. So what I'm using is our craft ink, and this is a really old ink pad. It's the old style, and the new one comes with a blank ink pad and the re-inker, and you ink it up to start. So I probably should invest in one of those myself. You're going to need watercolor pencils to color with, and a wedge of sponge. So I have my white wedge of sponge that I designate usually for this. Now for our paper, oh yeah, about the watercolor pencils, we have two packages. This one has 12 colors in it, and I'm going to be using the Coastal Cabana from one pack and Daffodil Delight from the other. So here's Daffodil Delight, and from the other pack, which they come in boxes, but I just take them apart and put them in our cases. It's just easier for me to get to, and that way I can leave a blender pen in there because I do use a blender pen a lot with my pencils. And the color from here that I'm going to use is Coastal Cabana. All right, so two assortments, and I'm going to use one pencil from each. The paper for this is a black card base. Doesn't have to be black, but the layer we're working on needs to be black, so I thought may as well go with that. So here's your standard card base. It was a piece that was 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 and folded in the middle. Hi, Vicki. Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. Haven't done this technique in a long time and saw it on the weekend when I was scrolling through and went, yeah, that's a good one to do. Okay, so there's your card base. Then you need, because I'm using a black card base, I'm going to put a piece of white on the inside, and usually I cut it to 4 by 5 1/4, but this time I had a piece sitting around that is a little bit smaller. It's 3 3/4 by 5, cut for something else, I'm sure. I'm just going to tuck that on the inside. There we go. And I'm going to do a little stamping, and I didn't put it quite too straight. There we go. So I'm going to do a little stamping on the inside at the end of the video. And then you need a piece onto which you're going to do your technique. Now this piece is 3.5 by 4 3/4, and to give it some fun and some dimension, I ran it through my die cutting machine with the Whimsy dies. So these look like our regular rectangular dies. All of our dies, you know, it looks exactly the same, except it doesn't cut out the edges. It does the stitching on the inside. So that's what you get here. And this was the second one in to fit on that size. So I just kind of wanted to play with those a little bit. So there's your card base, and then we're going to layer the piece rather that we're going to be working on onto something just a small piece larger, just a wee bit larger than the black. And then I've got some pattern paper. That's where I chose the inspiration from. This is Bumblebee, and it measures 1.5 excuse me, by 5.5, and that's going to be the piece that goes across here. So I'm going to do my card in the other orientation. It's going to actually go like this, and no, I'm not. I'm going to do it this way. Sorry, I just cut that piece too big, so I'm going to snip it off. I want it to be 4 inches across, 4 1/4 rather, across. So 1.5 by 4 1/4. Getting the paper trimmers close at hand. And that's going to go like that. This is going to be our technique on, and then that's going to layer on that. And then we're going to decorate the inside with this little strip I have, which is can be cut down too, and I'll do the inside the same way as I did here. Okay, let's get started with all this. So grab your piece of black. Now it's important that it's black. I've never done it with any other color, but I think it's really important that it be black. And your white ink. So in order to, and it's craft ink. So what's the difference between craft ink and regular ink? So our regular Stampin' Up! Ink pads are a water-based ink. This is a pigment ink, so it takes longer to dry. You can use it for embossing. You can use it for like heat embossing. You can use it for this technique and various others. So I'm going to take a sponge and I'm going to ink it up, and I'm just going to tap it off a little bit over here so I don't get too much. First off, I'm going to try it on the back and see how this works. And what I'm doing just by rubbing it on here is I'm giving the black that look that you get on a chalkboard when it's been cleaned but not perfectly, and you still got that little bit of residue, so it's not so stark. So look at that in comparison. The one that I did here in my left hand was done with a sponge dauber, and it just puts too much ink down. Here with the sponge edge, it just does a much better job. I did play a little bit with tapping it down and just kind of running it across, but I found that the sponge is really the way to go. You could use like a makeup sponge from the dollar store, that would work too. So now that I'm on the right side, or the good side, I'm just going to, I'm not blotching it, I'm not going in any pattern, I'm just probably tapping off a lot extra that I don't need to tap off, but I'm just tapping on and spreading on a little bit of ink to make it look like the chalkboard look. Okay, next I'm going to take my stamp. So this is the Flowers of Friendship. It's a new stamp set. I'm doing a class on it this month with the stamp set and punch as a bundle, and I've really enjoyed working with it. So it's a big stamp, so I'm going to go this way on it. I'm going to add my ink this way, and I'm just going to put it from sort of the left corner up, press it down. It takes a little bit of time to dry. There we go. So you get a nice white image. And then I'm going to put my greeting up in the corner as well. And if you're wondering, you want to put that chalkboard white with the sponge, you want to do that before you start stamping on there. Okay, so we'll ink up the greeting, which is little card, big thanks. And stick it up here too in the white. There we go. So let's set that side to dry, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about this ink. So because it's pigment, it doesn't clean so well with off of your stamps with water. I've seen people using the our Stampin' Cleaner system and such, but I don't think that's really the intended use there. It gets sticky, and so I'm going to show you what I do. Is I take for pigment inks, the Stays On Cleaner. I just rub it. It's like a sponge dauber, like if you're doing bingo, I guess. And just to add some on, then I take this old rag, which I've had in the stamp room forever, and I just wipe it off here. And then what you want to do after is then use your chamois or your Stampin' Mist just to get the residue of that off a little bit. I have left them, but I mean ideally that is what's going to be helpful. So we're going to clean this big one too, because I'm also going to use this with Memento ink on the inside layer. So here we go. And grab up my cloth and wipe it up. So a different formulation requires a different type of cleaner. I'm going to just add a little bit more. You can actually squeeze it out or daub it out like that. I've had this bottle for ages, and I have another one kind of still on the go that also has some in it. So it goes a long way when you invest in this. So if you have Stays On ink or any craft inks, that is what you're going to be needing to clean your stamps with. Okay, there we go. I'm not going to take the time to clean it fully and get the residue off because I'm going to be fine with this. But by now, this should be dry. And if it's not, you can always use your heat tool on it to dry it up a little bit. So now with the going ahead with adding color, when you're coloring, you want to make sure that you're not touching the white lines. So I'm just holding my hand on here. I know it's going to shake the camera a little bit because the camera is on the same table as I'm working on, but I'm just going to go ahead and color in the various petals. I'm going to do them in the daffodil. Again, keeping away as much as I can from the white lines. Not always easy because they're part of the design, right? So, and that's just so it doesn't meld. And it keeps it nice and having those white lines of the flower quite vibrant. Okay, so there is the daffodil, and then for the leaves, I'm going to use the Coastal Cabana. And then this just looks a little bit shiny. The last one I used Melon Mambo and Granny Apple Green. So more of the bright, bright pink and a very bright green. And we don't have them in the colors. The pencils, watercolor pencils are not in the colors like the ink colors. So this yellow is quite close, I think, to the bumblebee. It works well, so I'm happy with that. All right, keeping the blender pen because I'm going to need that first in a second. All right, so once you've got this part done, you can just glue this down. And I might add a little more sponging. Oopsie, this makes it not such a dark black. And that little border is really all you need around. It's perfect like that. Okay, and what I like about this card is you don't need a lot of embellishing. So if you're looking for ways to use your supplies to their fullest and not having to buy a whole bunch of embellishments, then this is kind of a good way too. All right, so I'm going to add some Memento. So this is our regular black ink, just as I did on the inside of this card. I'm going to put it up there, and I think I just picked it up. Oh no, that's good. Perfect. Okay, I'll clean that after with the regular cleaning, and then I'm going to just do the coloring in, but I'm going to show you the watercolor pencils in a different way again. So now I'm going to trim this piece down here. This is just a little scrap left over, and so may as well use it up. It's 3/4 of an inch by, oh sorry, 3.5 it should be. 3.5. There we go. Add a little bit. And that's going to go on the bottom. There we go. And now I'm going to color in my flowers again. So when you use regular white and you're coloring on, it's okay to go over the black in this case because it's not a pigment ink, it's different. It's the water-based ink, so it's not like the craft. But when you use watercolor pencils, they tend to look streaky and non-even. You put them down, you get different layers. It's not like you're doing your blends. So that's where the blender pen comes in. So I'm just double checking that I have something in the blender pen and it is not another bright color. And I just take it along like this and go over the watercolor pencil to meld those colors a little bit better together. Wipe that off so that's ready for next time. And there you have it. That's how you color and, oops, get closer, not have streaky lines. Okay, so we're ready to finish the card front here. I'm going to glue this down. This is our new in color paper pack design. I always do this and then I go, no, you know what, I should try to line it up on the lines and then I have a better chance of getting it straight. There we go. And then I'll put a few dimensionals on this. And we're just about there. A few minutes longer this time. So this is called the chalkboard technique for cards. It would be really neat if you're doing a scrapbook page and you had a bunch of different vintage pictures that you wanted to display. You could most definitely use this there, and I probably would take a little bit more of the sponge after in the open areas and just add a little bit more. There, perfect. So that's my card for tonight, and I will be back Thursday with a 3D project, and I will see you next week for another technique. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.